Tens of millions of years of evolution have perfected the Nile crocodile into the ultimate ambush predator. They are heavily armored, nearly invisible in the mud, and capable of dragging almost anything into the dark. We usually observe them from the safety of the banks. We document their habits and measure their strikes from a distance. But to see exactly what they see from the water, to capture an authentic eye-level perspective of their hunt, requires becoming the one thing you never want to be: their prey. Growing up in Zimbabwe, Nile crocodiles were right in the backyard, massive, stealthy, and dinosaur-like lizards. Watching legendary televised encounters by early wildlife icons planted a deep, lifelong obsession with understanding how these predators operate. But admiration from afar has its limits. To truly comprehend their raw power, you have to strip away the safety of the camera lens, get into the water on their terms, and let them hunt you. That meant returning to Zimbabwe. The goal was to find a dense population of aggressive crocodiles thriving in murky waters where visibility is almost zero. The first blueprint for a protective cage relied on giant floats, but the pontoons extended 8 feet in every direction. That massive footprint completely ruined the illusion. A predator won't treat a massive floating boat as an accessible meal, so the floats were stripped away. What remained was a tiny, stripped-down chicken wire coffin with zero buoyancy. To keep it from sinking, the box had to be suspended by a thin cable connected to a pulley system in a nearby tree. This introduced a lethal flaw. If that overhead cable snapped, 1,000 pounds of steel and human would plunge directly into the thick mud. With the terrain blocking off any rescue trucks, pulling the cage out by hand before the crocodile struck would be nearly impossible. There was no realistic backup plan. A single mechanical thread was the only thing standing between the occupant and a gruesome underwater death. Lying flat on your stomach inside that rigid wire frame, you are entirely paralyzed. The crew straps thick quarters of cow meat directly to the sides of the box, blinding your periphery, before winching you up and suspending you mid-air over the muddy pool. Then, halfway across the water, the tension suddenly slips. The entire apparatus violently drops a foot. For a split second, you are free-falling toward the jaws waiting below. The cable catches, and the cage bounces violently before settling. On the banks, the safety crew immediately debates pulling the plug. Inside the box, your mind races with the very real possibility of drowning in the mud, but the decision is made to push forward. The winch operators slowly lower the box again until your stomach finally hits the surface. The biting cold of the opaque green water sends a literal shock through your body. Once you break that surface plane, human agency vanishes. Your control dissolves, handed over entirely to the predators circling in the dark beneath you. You might expect an immediate, mindless frenzy. Instead, you see their chilling intelligence. They sit back. They stare. They coldly assess the silhouette and the splashing to figure out exactly what this new object is. Out of the shallow murk of this tiny pool, the dominant male rises. An 18-foot giant silently materializes from the absolute nothingness of the mud. He noses up quietly to inspect the bait, and then he explodes. With 1,000 pounds of bite force, he smashes the meat, violently throwing the suspended cage in a chaotic splash of green water. That first strike rings the dinner bell. The water erupts as 7 or 8 other massive crocodiles surge out from the banks, swarming the tiny wire frame in an aggressive frenzy. Then, their behavior shifts. They realize the chunks of meat on the outside aren't the main prize. They abandon the bait and lock their focus entirely on the human trapped inside. You feel heavy, armored snouts punching up out of the dark. They forcefully drive into the thin wire beneath your stomach, actively trying to break through to the soft underbelly of the cage. Staring right into their eyes, trapped and helpless, the comfortable illusion of human superiority crumbles. You are face to face with a predatory drive perfected over millions of years, and your instinct to run is completely blocked by the metal walls. As the animals realize they cannot crack the center open, the crew on the bank frantically engages the pulley. They haul the dripping cage up and away, dragging it clear of the dissipating feeding frenzy. Stepping back onto solid ground, the most disturbing reality sinks in. An 18-foot animal weighing nearly a ton successfully hid completely undetected in a tiny, shallow patch of dirty water. Enduring that nightmare serves a very specific purpose. It physically demonstrates how effortlessly these animals can ambush humans in seemingly safe waters, educating the public to stay out of creeks and rivers where the threat is completely invisible. True respect for nature requires fearing its power. When you step past the bank and break a calm surface, you are leaving your world behind and entering a domain owned by the ultimate killer since before humanity existed.